Today we'll discuss what is a consultant and how do you become a good one. Welcome to your Consulting Business Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson and this is episode number 68. Today on the show I want to talk about an answer to a question that I get a lot, which is how do you actually define consulting? And I also want to look at the steps I think that are important to ensure that you are consulting in an effective and increasingly valuable way. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd love you to do that. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you get notified when new shows like this one become live. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, because it is a podcast, that's what I keep saying anyway, I'd love you to also subscribe for new shows as they become live weekly. Now, what is a consultant? That is a question that people ask because they're sort of like sketchy on how do you define the specific activities or the definition of what a consultant does. And the Oxford Dictionary actually defines it as someone who gives expert advice professionally. And so with that definition, there's some very broad definitions on what a consultant can be. And I want to touch on a couple of things today. So number one, the different modalities of advice, because expert advice can be very, very broad. But also, what are the things that I think are really valuable to make sure that you're being an effective consultant? But also, what does it mean to give expert advice? So we're going to break it all up into a number of different areas. So the Oxford Dictionary, someone who gives expert advice professionally, and so let's start there. So as far as the modality, I think that we've got a number of different advice modalities. There's certainly consulting as one of those things. We've got mentoring or mentorship. We've also got coaching. Yeah, coaching is definitely one. And even therapy, right? So there's therapy, and the sort of the focuses on each of these things can be just a little different. There's a little bit of nuance to them. So consulting traditionally is someone who comes in to actually solve a problem. They will actually give you the specifics to do a thing to create an outcome. And that's based off their expertise. So that'll be their experience, their technical education, all those different things that come into it, which means that consultants can be from all sorts of different sectors and fields. You've got management consultants who tend to be focused on business and business performance and improvement. You've got engineering consultants or consulting engineers, and they are, there's all sorts of applications from there. You've got all sorts of different specialist and technical consultants in many different areas. And, you've got medical consultants, you've got sales consultants. There's so many different areas that consulting can happen. But ideally, the idea of consulting is that you come in and show someone or tell someone how to do a thing. So how to get a result, right? So that's consulting on one end. You've got mentorship, and mentorship is let me show you how I've done this before. So showing you the way that you've got your experience, and you're going to show them via your experience or through the lens of your experience how to get a result. Then you've got coaching. Now, coaching is ideally supposed to be, pure coaching, is supposed to be hands-off. And often that gets a little bit mixed up with consulting versus coaching, whereas coaching is the idea of guiding and supporting someone or empowering them to find the answers internally and to actually find the growth internally, because the concept behind it is that we have everything we need inside. Whereas consulting is the telling. So if you are doing coaching and you're telling somebody, you're really mixing modalities there, and you just need to be aware of when you're doing that. And I'll talk about the mixed modalities in just a moment. Then you've got therapy, which is actually helping people find a path to an outcome. Right? So they're very subtle differences, but I think if taking the word guide is a really, really useful one, and I'll talk a number of different reasons why, including towards the end of this video. The guidance piece, I think the word guide is a really good one, because in essence, if you think about a guide that's taking someone through, let's say, a forest or up a mountain or whatever it might be, they are showing you the way, but you still need to do the work. The guide's not carrying you necessarily, right? So it means that you are still doing the do. Now, what's useful about that is that you don't become a linchpin for the engagement to work or not work. And what I mean by that is if you suddenly are removed from the engagement, suddenly the result doesn't happen anymore. And that I see that consistently in the consulting space, where a consultant, through the process of telling someone how to do something, actually goes and does the thing themselves, which means they become instrumental in actually accomplishing the outcome. And so if you take them out of the situation, the organization is unable to accomplish the outcome. And it in fact disables that company or that business or that organization from being able to do the thing that it's supposed to do. So guidance is a little bit different, because technically the organization you're working with, if you're guiding them, you're actually showing them a way, but they're doing the steps, they're taking the steps up the mountain themselves, which means that if you disappear, they may be a little lost, but they know that they can do it. They know that there are steps that they have taken before, therefore there are steps that they can take in the future. And so be mindful of that. I think that's one of the big symptoms of problematic consulting, is that two things can happen. Number one, someone can leave an employment engagement and they start a consultancy is the word I'm looking for. And they'll start that consultancy and they'll still have their employee mindset, which means that they're thinking that they need to work within the parameters of the job. They need to, they are given things to do, rather than defining what are the things that should be done. And so with that employee mindset, you can end up falling into a trap where you just end up going from one job to a job where you've got all the responsibility of running your own business, but you're being treated like an employee, which doesn't give you the freedom and opportunities of actually having a consultancy in the first place. So that can happen. You can fall into that trap, which means that you really become an employee, or at the worst, best, I guess, a contractor for the organization. And again, if you were to be removed from that situation, the organization wouldn't be able to continue without you. I think enabling people rather than disabling people is the key in any of these advisory modalities. So how can you be in a situation where you're empowering and enabling them to, yes, get the result one time, but hopefully over time being able to get it again and again? There are consultants out there who are living in a very scarcity-based mentality, who are trying to create either silos or make themselves part of the project working so that they're indispensable. And you see the same thing happen with I've actually accidentally made these mistakes in the past, where I've put myself into a situation and gone, I'm the only one who can do this way, and I've gone and done certain things to make a project work, and therefore if I'm not there in the future, the projects don't continue to work. And the opportunity as a good consultant is for you to come in and actually design with the idea that you're not going to do the pieces. Now that's more valuable for the client, and it is more valuable for you as well, because you can actually leave an engagement and know that you've left it than how you received it. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we've got consulting really coming in. You want to make sure that you're enabling the client that you're working with rather than disabling them in whatever modality you're using. Now, there's consulting, coaching, mentorship or mentoring, therapy. And there are others, of course, other different modalities. But I love the idea that a consultant, in fact, a select consultant, the way I would describe it, someone who gets to select the work they do, work with who they want, whenever they want. So someone who's like really giving high value is someone who is actually learning these other modalities to know when they're going to be best used. So if you're just a consultant, you have like a consulting process, you will probably find that there are times when it works and times when it doesn't. There are limiting situations, and one of those limiting situations is humans, right? Now, if you need to guide and enable a human to become someone new, to take on a management position, to take a leadership position, to actually see themselves differently, that role is less done by a consultant in the traditional sense, and much more done by a coach. And so from time to time, the effective select consultant is able to use coaching as one of the modalities to help the organization or the entity, whatever it is, become more enabled to complete goals, to actually get results. All right, so coaching is a great opportunity there. Then you've got therapy. Now, therapy is just a deeper version of the human work. In some cases, you want to be the person who can do that. In other cases, you don't. And I think understanding just enough therapy to know where you should be doing the work and where you should be referring it on is, again, a very, very useful thing to do. So even being able to diagnose to a degree, to go, this is within my wheelhouse and this is not. Now, mentorship is the other one, and I think mentorship is great. It's good to have mentors. It's good to seek mentors out, and it's really empowering and rewarding to be a mentor. But the challenge in being a mentor is just because you were successful in getting from here to there doesn't mean that the person that you're mentoring is going to have the same process to get from here to there. They're a different person. They have different strengths and weaknesses. You can show them or tell them how you got from here, and you can help them to get to there. But at the end of the day, it is much more useful for a mentor to also have some of that coaching and also have some of that consulting work or modality on board, so they can actually switch gears when they need to enable them to see through the lens of their mentee, right? The person being mentored.
I wanted to quickly jump in and remind you about RussellPearsonPrograms.com. We put all sorts of resources specifically for consultants on that page, and if you go there right now, you'll see that there are some new resources available absolutely free for you to download. So go to RussellPearsonPrograms.com. Now, back to the show.
Now, I guess what I'm summing up is that as a successful consultant, it makes sense to continually be on a development path. And let me start there. I think a good consultant in themselves is someone who is continuously developing. Now, you have your set of expertise. In fact, the Oxford Dictionary says it's about expert advice that you sell professionally or you trade in professionally. And so you have certain expertise, whether it be from experience or from training. Now, yes, that should always be updated and improved as things change and new methods come to light and the world around us evolves. So that's one side. But on the other, which is the craft of consulting, I think that there is much more work to do in the craft. And a lot of people will see this as some of the soft skills things. And those people who have been consultants for any length of time will go, oh, yeah, soft skills, I understand that. It's how to communicate, how to manage people, all those different things. But it is so much more than that. Especially when you start looking through some of these other lenses like like coaching and therapy and adding them to your consulting game. Because suddenly you start realizing that, number one, you should be hands off because you want to enable that person or the organization to get goals on their own. But also, you'll start to realize that you're not just designing for in every situation. We go, oh, well, normally this would work, so therefore it should work here. You start really looking much deeper at the projects and the people and the organizations you're working with and designing specific results for their outcomes. Now, a large part of that is communication, but it's also about human psychology and other things that need to be added or taken away to enable a result. So the more that you can actually learn about psychology of humans, about design thinking, about, yes, the consulting processes, procedures, and questions. Questions being the magic wand of the magic consultant. How to ask those great questions becomes so key to the work that you do. But also understanding things like the hero's journey. Understanding that people are on a pathway and they need to go through certain challenges so that changes stick. There is different parts of design or deeper ways of looking at a design that you have the opportunity to learn so that you can improve, not just in your standing or in your authority or your knowledge, but actually improve results. You can get results faster. You can get bigger results. You can get more efficient results. And so all this comes from usually not the increase in the development of your technical expertise, but in your consulting method and your consulting methodologies. And the more that you have to draw on and the more you understand how they work in different situations, the more effective you're going to be. So I think the good consultant is always developing in that way. And what's cool about that, you may want to retire, that's absolutely fine, but you don't need to retire. As long as you've got your faculties in check, you can continue to improve. And I know some really successful consultants who are still working in their 80s because they want to be working in their 80s. Not because they need to. In fact, they haven't needed to since they were in their 40s, but they're doing this work because they love it and they continue to develop and they continue to get better. So that development piece is part of it. Second one I think is worth looking at is do no harm. So obviously, as consultants, the majority of us don't actually need to take any oath the way a medical professional or a medical consultant would. And so at least having the ethos to understand that we're going into a situation. Some of these situations are high risk. They are high risk financially. In some cases with safety consultants and things like that, there's much more risk involved, risk of maiming, risk of death and the like. So going into a situation with the first understanding of protection or do no harm, not in a way that's going to scare you from taking steps, but in a way that you start at least looking through that lens to not just go and replace things that are already in place within an organization, but understand, but if I pull something out, what is that going to do to the system that's already running? And in that case, I'm not talking about safety consulting, I'm talking about just systems. You know, you could pull something out because you don't believe it's right in your world. You go and pull it out, and then suddenly their system doesn't work anymore, and they can be losing hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars all of a sudden because you just made a change. So I don't say this to frighten you. I don't say this to put fear in your heart. I say this for you to at least look through that lens of do no harm when you actually come in to an engagement. Now, the one I've talked about in the past is the value piece. How can you deliver enough value? Now, I think a good consultant should be at least delivering 10x value, 10 times the amount of value they're being paid. And if that is the case, they should be being paid at least a tenth of the value of that outcome. Now, there are people who do not work with money, right? And so those consultants who don't work in a space where there's a financial gain or a financial saving often have a challenge where they feel that it's difficult to measure value. And I think the opportunity for you, if you're in one of those spaces, is find a way to do that. And that's one of the things that we do in the Forge is we help people no matter what situation they're in. We guide them in a process where they're able to measure their results so that they can quantifiably know what is the value that they're bringing to the table. Now, there's a book that I think I've recommended before. Let's see, Alfred, you want to put up a picture of this? It's called Measure Anything. Yeah, you can put it up there. Measure Anything is a book that I've read. It's quite dense, to be honest. It's like it's a little bit technical, but it is a really good resource if you're looking for a way to measure anything. So it's usually about measuring things that you would typically think are intangible. One of the clients that we work with is in the education space, and they're education strategists. So they're not necessarily working on how do you increase your income or what have you, even though long-term career is certainly one of those things that can be measured against. But they're measuring against potential and opportunity and all those different aspects that come from getting a good results and a good education. So within your world, you need to now look through your lens and see, are there ways where you can see that you're getting at least 10x return? And if you're not, how can you improve those results? And it's usually not in the technical, it's usually in the methodology to ensure that you are delivering results that you can not only be proud of, but be very confident in the dollars that you're charging at the end of the day. Hopefully you found this valuable. If you haven't already checked it out, go to russellpearsonprograms.com. I've got something coming up very soon that you may be interested in if you are a consultant. I'll probably talk about that a little bit more next week, so certainly tune in for next week's show. We're going to be talking about something that is around the topic of today, which is about improving. How do we go about improving in a way that it's not just education. How can we improve in a way that's going to be most effective, and it's a way that's been most effective over the centuries where people have become great at anything. So I'm a little excited about it, but I'll tell you about it next week. Until we speak, stay passionate, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.